Here we are.
Here we are. And if you're listening, you can't see that we are here together, which we're not normally together when we record.
No, we have one mic between us.
Yes. So you can go over to YouTube and see us, or just picture it in your head. We're standing shoulder to shoulder.
In Boulder, Colorado.
Yes. This is not live, but we're pretending like it is. We're pretending like there's a studio audience right here. And we are in Boulder because we are celebrating something, just the two of us, but we wanted to celebrate it with you as well. And it may not feel like a celebration to some people. This may feel like, why are you celebrating this? But it's part of what we're going to be talking about the next few episodes. Krista, what are we celebrating?
Well, today we're talking about courage in the unknown. And a huge piece of that is we have decided to retire the podcast.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So we're just going to let that sit for a second. We have told people we know in our actual lives that are faithful listeners, a few of you, we haven't been able to tell everybody. And we know that some people are going to be sad because this has been a long journey of friendship together. And we aren't leaving for a particular reason. It's a combination of reasons. So I think that may feel confusing to people too. So let's talk about why. Why are we, after 10 years, ending the podcast, and why now?
It's interesting because we've walked together for so many years. We've really grown up together in an interesting way in the last decade. And I wonder if some of you listeners feel the same way. We've grown up together as we've been walking this road and raising kids and trying to live intentionally and trying to live faithful lives, that we've done it together. And that's been such a gift.
It has.
There's been multiple times over the years where we said, is this it? Is this it? Like, is this the time?
Right.
And it hasn't been the time. And we went into this year and we both said that we would wait for alignment.
And there's a lot going on in our lives. But the truth is, there's been a lot going on in our lives the last 10 years, right? But our lives look different than they did 10 years ago. And part of what is different is we have bigger commitments in our work lives.
Yes.
So we, in the past, have been able to jump on and do an episode, record, and we just don't have that anymore. We also, people may not know, but it costs money to put out a podcast. I mean, people are often surprised when I tell them, well, we have to pay for the platform that it's put on and our scheduling for our guests and
production.
Yes. And so all of that costs money. And over the years, God has been so good that he has allowed us to cover those costs through the fees for the retreats that we put on. And when we decided that in October it was going to be our last retreat, we were in some ways deciding the funding for the podcast is over. We could pay for it on our own, but we've just decided that it's a value of ours that the sisterhood would fund the podcast. And so that also has changed. So there are a few different components. I will say I have really loved the last few years since we rebranded.
Yes.
This idea of nailing midlife. But even this feels very symbolic to midlife.
100% does.
Because we are having to have the courage to say, we're ending something that's good. And we're going to talk about that next week. But also, we don't necessarily know the next, except that it's more of what's already in our lives right now.
Yeah. And how do you step into that unknown space with courage and strength, knowing that God is leading and that he's always at work, and it's going to look a little differently, but this step is leading to another step. And, as I said before, we've been waiting for that alignment, and it really did come for both of us. And I thought that was a beautiful process. because that was important to me because you are so important to me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to cry a lot, people, on these episodes, these last ones. That's just the way it's going to be. Because I really do feel my emotions in the present. And so just know that the tears are a part of me being alive in this and fully present to it. Alex means so much to me. And it was important to me that we end well and that we align on when that would be. And God did that. And I wonder too, as we look at courage, do we ask that question in prayer to God? Like, God, give me the courage to end something. And we're going to talk more about necessary endings next week and what happens when you end something. But I think it's this idea of let's have the courage to ask questions and to then be moved, even if we don't know where we're going. So Alex, talk a little bit about the unknown for you and how does this symbolically end something and then kind of start you on a path that feels a little, you can see some of the steps ahead, but not all.
We talked last night about what do we know versus what do we not know? What is certain, if you want to use that stronger language, what is certain versus uncertain? And the more we talked about it, we're like, really, there's not a lot that's certain. There's just not. I mean, we're certain about how we feel about people, but because of midlife and then also because of recent things that have happened to friends of ours, everything feels a little bit like you just can't count on certain things happening tomorrow. So that feels scary. And at the same time, it does take some of that pressure off of some of the big, what can in the moment feel like weighty decisions, but they're not moral right or wrong decisions. They are more just trade-off decisions. And I think that's what we were getting to when we decided to end, is that this wasn't a question of right or wrong. It was a question of, is this the right timing for right now? And that to me feels like what I've been living the last few years when so many things in my life have been shifting. And the opportunity I see as we let go of this, and it's not necessarily because I am jumping into something next, is there is space for whatever God might have for me. And maybe that's working in my yard more, like something that I find to be quite not sexy and maybe not even that fun, but things that just have to get done. Maybe there's just more space for that. But maybe it's something I have no idea what it is.
Yes.
And I feel very open in that, open-handed, but also open-hearted. Like my heart is open to how this energy that has been dedicated to the podcast and this time could be used in other ways.
Yeah, when I think about open-heartedness, it feels like a really important concept. Kelly Flanagan, who, if you've been listening for a long time, you know I love, he's a therapist that has so much wisdom. And he just released a book called The Road Less Triggered.
Why does that strike me as funny? It shouldn't. But I mean, it's clever. Cute.
It's clever, kind of like Scott. Well, for those of you that don't know, Scott Peck released one of the most popular, I think, psychology books of all time called The Road Less Traveled.
Yes. Well, right. And it's just a popular saying. So The Road Less Triggered is just referencing that. But man, don't we all need that? I mean, I think that's why I find it funny is we just are triggered by so many things.
Yes.
So, okay, go on. The Road Less Triggered.
So I've just started reading it, but I've been following his Substack for a long time because I like him so much and gain a lot from his wisdom. But the whole book is on open-heartedness, really. He talks in the book about this moment where he's at this therapy conference, or I don't know where he is. He's somewhere. There's a therapist leading the session. And she says, okay, it must have been for marriage because it was between two couples. And she said, okay, I want you to have this conversation and I want you to close your heart. Close it. And so then they have like 10 minutes of this conversation with a closed heart. And then she brings him back and she says, okay, I want you to have the same conversation and I want you to open your heart. And at the end, the whole point of it was we have a choice
Mm-hmm.
and we can choose to be open-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love what you were just saying there. And I think there's something too for me in this season,
Mm-hmm.
this posture of open-heartedness.
Yeah. Because really, the unknown is midlife.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we're in our 20s, 30s, and even early mid 40s, we have a certain level of certainty. And probably God has wired us that way from a survival approach. We work and we build and we make plans, and then we have to adjust or we become bitter or we don't survive.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of having courage in the unknown really is this posture of, okay, God, I am going to take on whatever life throws at me, knowing that you're with me. And that's what I kind of whittled down to. The only thing I'm certain of is that God will be with me.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true, and I don't even think we said when we're ending.
No. So this is in May. We're airing this in May. There will be 2 more episodes after this. So the end of May is our end.
Yeah. I really like what you said there of God will be with us. And as we were thinking about this concept, and we started talking about Esther.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about Esther a little bit.
Well, Esther had to do some things that I feel like she had some choice in that she could have not done them, but she felt very called to respond, and some very courageous out of the box things as far as approaching the king. And she just decided, this is my moment. And I can see how, and I have had times in my life where I have felt very called to something. And I have said, like writing certain books.
Yep.
I don't know what's going to come of it, but I just feel this drive. I feel this call. I know God has asked me to step into this. I have also had times where I have not felt as called. And so stepping into the unknown feels a little more ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Esther is a great example of, she felt a strong call without knowing what the end results were. And so she was able to muster up the courage to do some kind of crazy things. So if that's the case, great. And I think we also have to recognize not everybody listening feels like this real strong call into the next step. And I'm probably a good embodiment of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I have courage without necessarily the call, except that we're always called to love God and love our neighbors. So I know that is my bigger call. Am I talking in circles? I feel
No,
like.
but I do think it's interesting. And we talked about Moses a little bit. And I think what's so interesting about his story is God says, okay, you're going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm sending you to the desert for 40 years and you're just going to be out there. And like, talk about courage in the unknown. Like, wait, I thought I had this really important call on my life. And now I feel sidelined and just like out here tending animals and doing these everyday things that feel really boring and menial. And then God calls him back into action in a bigger way, in the way that he had originally designed. And yet he had work to do in him before he could take on that role. And I think, isn't that interesting too, that those times of preparation, and do we have that through line of courage in all of it?
Yeah. And what if my call, even if I have time of preparation, doesn't end in some big event?
Right.
That too is something we have to wrestle with right now, as perhaps we are saying no to things like this podcast. When we started the podcast 10 years ago, we said our lives were different. I was actively writing books. So having a podcast made marketing sense, right? I was trying to be in front of my audience in between the publishing of books to keep myself relevant. And as I have stepped away from writing, because in part wanted to step away from that marketing component, the podcast was still a little bit of this hold on of But what if that comes back? Then I'll still have the podcast that I can point publishers to. And so for me, a little bit of letting go is letting go of other tangential things that have been attached to it.
That's really honest. It's really honest.
Mm-hmm. And I just want people to hear that sometimes when we're letting go of something, to recognize we're letting go of more than just that thing. It's the hope of something else, perhaps. And I'm not saying that I hope to write more books. I don't necessarily hope to. I'm open to it. I'm open-hearted to it if God calls me to. But right now, I haven't felt that call the last 4 years, really, of our 10 years of doing the podcast. So anyway, I just want people to maybe wonder if they're struggling with letting go of something, if it is representing letting go of something even more.
That's right. There's always deeper.
Mm-hmm.
There's always deeper. It's so true. And I appreciate that. Let's talk about faith versus certainty. And we're going to be doing that a lot in these episodes of getting into some philosophical things.
Yeah. So certainty means I know what the outcome will be. And so I will act accordingly. Essentially, there's a formula. If I do A plus B, I will get C. It will be spit out. And faith says, I am going to trust the process. I am called to the next step, again, with the open-heartedness, not necessarily being guaranteed. Now, maybe we have a hope. Maybe there's logic that points in a certain direction, but there's not a guarantee. And as an Enneagram 6, I think I am a person who likes to look at things from many angles to make sure we get as close to certainty as possible. That, like, what's the downside? What are the risks? What are the things we're not thinking of that would keep us from getting the end result? So strategizing around, really, how do we get as close to certainty in an area where there may not be some? So I feel like I am in that space a lot of, okay, we have done everything we can to move in this direction, and now we just have to trust that God will either allow it or not.
There's so many things that are uncertain in this stage in life. I mean, as we were talking at dinner last night, I was just giving examples of, I have no idea where my kids are going to end up, for example. Like, that's very uncertain. I've had a lot of health problems. There's a lot of people around me that are having a lot of health problems, some really devastating. We're not guaranteed our health. We're not guaranteed our spouse's health. And now we're back to what I am certain of is my faith in God. And I'm certain that he will be with me. I'm certain of that. But those are just, I think, a few examples of where I feel some uncertainty.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually feel, now again, like nothing is certain, but I actually feel professionally, I know a little bit more of where I'm headed as I've gotten deeper and deeper into coaching. It's that next step confirms the next step. And that has felt like where God is leading me. And I do feel so much purpose in this season. It lights me up. And so it's interesting that different seasons of our life, there may be a certain lane that we feel like we have a little more direction toward. That lane may change.
Yeah, the pivot.
The pivot.
The pivot. When we rebranded the podcast and chose this name, Our Time to Rise, the word pivot was thrown around a lot as a word that maybe we would want to have in the title, because so much of this time is just shifting. And we felt like this idea of rising to meet the moment was a little more inspirational.
Right.
And also a little more agency was involved. Instead of just adjusting, we are stepping into what God has called us to. And so really this is what this is about, is meeting God where he is already waiting for us. Because he's already waiting for us, and whatever that unknown is, he knows, and he's there. And our moment to rise is to step up next to him. He's already waiting there for us.
Yes, I love that. What about some of the science of courage? Tell us a little bit about what psychology and neuroscience says.
Well, I will say in my work the last few years, I have learned a lot about brain development, and especially around trauma and how it impacts us and our brain. Our brainstem dictates our fight or flight response. The things like our heart beating, our breath, that if those things become dysregulated because of our fear, we can't access our rational thinking, so our prefrontal cortex, and we get stuck in that we call our fear brain. So we have to regulate our bodies in order to be able to access that. And when a child, for example, whose brain is developing, or even somebody who experiences a trauma, the connection between the brainstem and the prefrontal cortex is compromised. So all of those neurons that connect the two, that help the two communicate, are compromised. And so you get stuck. You can, if you don't have those pathways to your prefrontal cortex, you can get stuck in this fight or flight response. So somebody who may have what you and I would consider a normal disappointing thing happen may just completely unravel because they can't access their prefrontal cortex. So I think this idea of knowing that that's how our brain works and saying we can still have healing though, because neuroplasticity, it allows us to have that fight or flight response to keep ourselves safe in trauma, but it also allows us to practice moving into that prefrontal cortex and creating new pathways. And so I think just having moments where we maybe need to stop and recognize my body is responding in a fight or flight response. How can I practice accessing my prefrontal cortex? Well, first we have to regulate our bodies so that we can do that. But I think it's also, as people who are adults operating in the world, we have the agency to be able to say, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to think about this. I'm not going to go in this spiral. And it's not easy. Mm-hmm. And it can take years for healing to happen. But I think the good news is that we don't have to get stuck in that fear. If that's kind of our go-to, we can begin to train our brain to go to some of that critical thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about, okay, so how do we know? Because maybe in a child, it's more visible.
Yeah.
But how do we know as midlife adults that we are in that state? Mm-hmm. It can look like things like you're just grasping for control suddenly. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm in that state, I'll just immediately try and take control of something because that feels like I'm somehow controlling what's happening. It feels good, but it's not accessing my thinking brain. What else might it look like for someone in midlife, do you think?
I do wonder about big emotional responses that don't match the infraction. So I may get really emotional, or Derek might get upset about something I say. We both wonder, like, why did you respond that way when it doesn't seem like what I said or did would warrant that kind of response? So I think that can be a symbol like, oh, what is happening here? That the road less triggered. How can I be less triggered here? But being curious about ourselves and saying, okay, this did trigger something in me. And just even thinking about it puts us back in that prefrontal cortex.
I was giving a workshop yesterday, and it was actually on grit, but I was talking about courage because really to have grit, you have to have courage. To have courage, you have to have grit. I mean, there's kind of this relationship between them. But one of the things I was talking about was how courage is a muscle, just like mindset is a muscle, and we have to grow it. And so one of my questions might be, how can you grow a little bit of courage today? Just a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot of bit. Like you don't have to do something crazy and like Esther, but how do you just grow that little bit, that one step of courage? And then tomorrow, maybe you'll have 2 steps of courage. And then the next day, 3 steps. But it is like a muscle in that we have to train it.
Yeah. And I want listeners to hear, if you're doing something scared, that is building courage.
Yes.
So you might say, but I can't muster up that courage. I don't feel courageous.
Mm-hmm.
It's the action of doing it anyway that
Mm-hmm.
is the courage itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I like that challenge a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about in this season the idea of flexibility. Susan David out of Harvard wrote a book called Emotional Agility that I've been, in fact, I'm planning to get trained by her in emotional agility because I love it so much. But it's all about how do you regulate your emotions well and also be able to be flexible in life and adapt according to the environment and the situation and the emotional load, whatever it is. So how do we do that?
I think we stay connected to what's most important to us, to our values, and say, what's a given? Like, this is going to always be true. What is uncertain? And how do I want to respond in this? What kind of person do I want to be
I love
in
that.
Because we often can't control a lot right now. I mean, I just think about so many parts of my life I have no control over, or I have some control now, but it could change quickly.
Yeah. I think too, in that is this idea of act even when outcomes are unknown, that there is some resiliency that's built while we're in motion. Is there ever a time we know the whole path? I don't think so. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. We only know the next step, and God gives us only that. And so when we act in the unknown, that actually builds resiliency in us too, and faith, because we see God provide while we step. And now there's the Peter stepping out of the boat.
I mean, Peter, he did not know what was going to happen.
Right.
He didn't know, but he believed that Jesus had the power to do something. I wonder if he thought, he's going to push me up into the sky. He's going to part the water. He's going to make the boat move under me. He didn't know what the plan was. Jesus said, come to me.
Yeah, it's so good. Well, as we close today, what would you say are some of your encouragements to people? I mean, we are stepping into some unknown, and I'm imagining that a lot of you are, because you're in the same stage of life that we are. So what would some of your encouragements be?
Yeah, that it is okay to not know the future. We weren't created to know the future. If God wanted us to, he would have made us that way. And that it is probably a gift in a lot of ways that we don't. So to walk in that knowledge that we don't have the whole map, but we do have usually a clear sense of what our next step is, or at least a few options that are of equal moral value, where we just have to look at the trade-offs and say, neither option is wrong. So I just have to make it based on the trade-offs.
You know, something that Emily P. Freeman talks about, and I think a lot of spiritual directors talk about it, but look for the arrows that you might not have a big neon flashing sign that says, this is the next season of life. But look for the arrows. There just might be a slight this way, a slight that way. And that feels helpful as people are looking toward their next steps. I would also say that allow unfinished chapters. And I mean, I was telling you on our walk this morning that my new posture is just, I simply open my hands a lot as a symbol of, I'm going to accept whatever this is and the season that's here. And I'm going to be okay with it as it is and trust that God is working. That feels like a physical movement that helps me reset my heart and mind posture.
I like the idea of holding opportunities loosely, because an opportunity doesn't have to be forever. It's just that. It's an opportunity. And I'm thinking about at work, I have had some moments where I've thought, yeah, I can do that. And it's not forever, But what it does is it builds a new skill set in me, or it exposes me to a new area of work that I haven't been exposed to before. And so I don't have to, as an overthinker, I don't have to overthink every decision about, well, what is this going to mean for my career trajectory, for example? But I can just say, sure, let's do it. Let's try it. And most things are undoable, meaning if a year from now I have all of a sudden taken on things that I didn't want to do and I'm hating it, there is agency there. And I can look for new opportunities. But I would say maybe say yes more.
I love that. Say yes more. Yes. You know, I said that to a friend the other day too. It's actually a mutual friend of ours. We had just seen each other in San Diego, Jen Jones, who we love. And I said to her, honestly, when it comes to you, my answer is always yes. And I wonder if in this season, we just say yes to people. Like when it comes to you, my answer is yes, because you're amazing. And I love being with you and you make me better. And I'm committed to you as a friend. And maybe it's a thing you're saying yes to, but maybe it's people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think any parent of young adult, if an opportunity comes up to be with our kids, we're like, yes. So of course, there are some relationships where that's really clear, but I'd say maybe for ones that aren't as clear, if there's an invitation there, an opportunity, it doesn't have to be forever. But to say yes for right now, because who knows? Who knows what God has in that?
Yes. I think too, we can ask the question of what might this season be preparing me for? I was talking to a friend the other day about that, who feels like she's just in a season of waiting and maybe even a little bored. My question to her was, what opportunity is here for you in this season? Where maybe you do have a little more margin, you do have a little more time, or maybe you're not having to think as hard about things because it's easy to get the things done that you need to get done. What opportunity lies there? Now you're thinking differently of, oh, maybe I have some room to do some things. And that then changes how you see that season of life.
Yeah. The unknown can feel like a big black hole. So we hope that there are some questions here or some perspectives that might make it feel more hopeful if you're feeling really overwhelmed.
Okay, well, thank you for being with us. We've got 2 more episodes together after this one. But thank you for holding our announcement, our news with us, because I know that you are, because I know you. I know who you are, listener, and you are someone who is kind and caring and loves well. And thank you for just holding us in this time. It really means a lot.
Yeah, it does. And we love you. We've done it for 10 years because we love you.
Yeah. And thank you for, I guess, together, we are finding our courage together in the next season.
Yeah.